Hey there, Booktube. It is your on-the-scene correspondent, Buck, and his attorney, Beefton Duke, and I would like to welcome you back to another episode of Buck's Books. So today, I'm going to be threading the needle a little bit. What you must understand is I have been trying to play things very squeaky clean, very Disney, and I find that I cannot this time around because of the title and also the concepts presented in the book that we're going to be talking about today. Ordinarily, I would try to make this a PG experience. I cannot. Typically, I avoid books with cuss words in the title because they're bad. Almost universally, they're bad. It's a cheap gimmick. It's what's the one that everybody likes so much? The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Flip. You know that one? Sucks. That book sucks. Everybody recommended that book to me. And I went and I made it I think 20% of the way through, maybe a quarter. And it was just so bad the entire time, you know? And the philosophical concepts he was presenting were not particularly difficult, assuming you have any experience with philosophy whatsoever. But I think that's sort of the point of that book. It was marketing to people who had never read anything voluntarily. And he's like, oh, wait till I blow your mind with this new idea I came up with, and let me slide in some cuss words. And it was ridiculous and bad. So that has been my experience with every book that has a cuss word in the title, and unfortunately also true of the book by Steven Pressfield. I don't remember the name of it because it was so forgettable. But Steven Pressfield, he wrote The War of Art. The War of Art is one of the best books I've ever read. The War of Art is like the end-all be-all in terms of books about unlocking your own creativity and dedicating to the craft, you know, your work and the demon-resistant. One day I will set aside the 45 minutes that it will take to bang through that audiobook again, and then I will review The War of Art for you, and everyone will be much better off for it, but that is not today. Today, without any further ado, Bullshit Jobs by David Graeber. Now, you'll notice I said the cuss word, and there will be more of that coming forward because there's simply no way to get around it. I was recently taken to task by a handsome gentleman in my own comments for my cowardice in avoiding the use of banned words on YouTube, as I am not myself monetized. And that's true, but you dress for the job that you want, not for the job that you have, genius. And the job that I want is park ranger, I guess, you know, but I see no reason to cheapen the experience of what I'm doing here by trying to impress people by saying cuss words. Unfortunately, I can't get around the saying of the cuss words in this one because the cuss words are pivotal to what he's trying to push. So David Graeber, first of all, despicable academic. Cannot stand an academic. There's nothing worse than a career academic. Well, probably genocide, but career academics are up there. And I do this to myself very often because if someone's whole job is just teaching and they write a book, why are you writing a book? You don't do anything. All you do is read books. You're not contributing in any meaningful way to the discourse except in talking about the discourse. You know, it's circular. This is a mildly hot take. It is inspired by the trauma that I have experienced over my extensive educational career, because there's just so many teachers, and you know how you know, like ACAB You know, and you know how there are the people who are going to say, well, not all cops are bad. You don't know my cousin. I believe you. I believe in the good cops. I look forward to meeting one day. And in the same way, I believe that there are good teachers. But I, myself, have been through 12 years of the school that we are mandated by the government to go to. And then an additional voluntary 6 years to become overeducated in psychology, which, honestly, they just keep making you read in Freud and Pavlov. Like, I could have done that on my own. Technically, I did do that on my own before I went to school. But now I'm very deep in debt for the opportunity to have these neurotics recommend that I continue to read Freud and Pavlov, which I already did. The point I'm trying to make is, in the summation of this time, we are looking at a grand total of 18 years, right, during which I was in school. And I can count on one hand how many good teachers I had. And most of them weren't even especially good at teaching. Those were just the decent people. You know, like there was the one who I'd come in with bruises all over my arms in high school because I was troubled. I was getting into all sorts of stuff. And she pulled me aside after class. She's a Spanish teacher. She pulled me aside after class and she said, listen, I've been noticing what's going on with your arms. Is everything all right at home? And I was like, wow, yeah. I mean, as all right as can be expected, considering the sort of substrate in which we live here. But yeah, that's not where these are from. These are from my lifestyle that I sneak out of the house to pursue. This is, nope, can't blame the parents on this one, at least not directly. I said, but thank you for being the first person in 10 years to care. So, not that I'm bitter. It's just, in my experience, teachers aren't good for anything. So then they write books. And I love evolutionary biology professors who write books because evolutionary biology is always very funny to me. And there are people who do legitimate research. And I'm not necessarily knocking them. I can go off on a tangent about research at another time. The trusting of the science. I've become a little disillusioned with the trusting of the science, and I believe this is a pretty universal experience, especially over the past 5 years, if you know what I'm saying. But not to be a conspiracy theorist of any kind, because they're not theories anymore, and they're not conspiracies if they're true. But we don't have to do that today. Today, what we have to talk about is bullshit jobs, and the bullshit jobs theory that the wretched anthropologist academic David Graeber is pushing is that there is a great sum of work that we presently do that doesn't do anything. A lot of these jobs that people have don't serve any function. They're jobs that are just to inflate the egos of the higher-ups, you know, people who are above them in some way. He compares it to sort of having an entourage. And he compares the whole thing to feudalism. And his argument was that capitalism is essentially a form of feudalism. And I am so tired of whenever anybody starts with capitalism, you know they're just going to be complaining. And like, okay, dude, but get a job. Like, I myself have done all sorts of stuff. I've done everything. I was an unemployable scumbag. Well, but the problem is I was an unemployable scumbag with a phenomenal work ethic when I was young. So the reason I'm so old and only have my master's is because after I got out of high school, I said that I'm going to make it on my own. I'm going to make money. Because all of the problems in life are caused by not having money. So I'm going to go make money and then all my problems will go away. And it turns out all of my problems were not necessarily caused by money, although didn't help. So I worked a lot of blue-collar stuff. I was loading trucks, I was landscaping, I was doing all sorts of the kind of jobs where you like wake up at 4 in the morning, you know, and your hands look like this. My hands look like this now because of lifting, but they looked like this then because I was actually doing things with them. and you travel around and no one else is awake, and the other guys are smoking like cheap stinky cigars and saying cuss words, and you recreationally abused stimulants in order to be more effective at whatever manual labor that you're going to be doing. Or I'm in there loading a truck, and I had to, like, every couple weeks I had to go and steal a new set of mechanics gloves, you know, the ones with the big rubberized palms, like a tire on your palm, every 2 or 3 weeks, because handling all of the boxes and loading the truck would just tear the skin off your hands and then also off of the gloves. And it's not like that was budgeted in to the $10 an hour or whatever it was I was making, you know. Like, they're not gonna give you can't write off the mechanics gloves. They're not gonna give you a budget for that, and you're working to survive, so something's got to give. Wouldn't recommend this to anybody, but this was how you live. It's a Jean Valjean situation. I was stealing the bread. So got caught for it, actually. Got caught when I was a teenager for, I had like a pack, I think it was a stick of deodorant and the mechanics gloves for work in my coat. And like, that's what I was ripping off, you know? And they didn't prosecute because it wasn't enough money to prosecute, but they did send a letter to my mom, which to this day, that haunts me. Sorry, Mom. I'm better now, but the idea behind the bullshit jobs is there are multiple kinds of jobs. There's bullshit jobs and there's shit jobs, and then there's just actual jobs, you know? So an actual job is something that you do and you feel good about doing and it pays decently. These are the overwhelming minority. There aren't many things that you can do that are real and also pay. And that's sort of the argument that our man David Graeber is making. The idea behind bullshit jobs is these are jobs that pay pretty good, but they suck your soul because you know it's all busy work. You know it's make work. Like, you're going in there and you're clicking boxes, and it's not even real data entry because the data's already been entered. You're just like rearranging the data for no reason. Or you're going to meetings. You know, you have an 8-hour day and you spend maybe a half an hour of it doing actual work that needs to be done, and then you spend an hour of it doing emails, and then you spend 5 hours of it on just like Reddit or whatever you do at work. And then after that, the rest of your day is, after factoring out the lunch, the rest of the day is devoted to you going to meetings where everyone sits around and pretends they did things, or uses jargon, or HR shows up and they try to amp you up for how great the company is, you know? So, obviously, this is soul-crushing, this is draining, but this is how you live. These jobs allow you to buy a house. These jobs allow you to support a family. These jobs allow you to eat. To buy the medical, to pay for the medical insurance that you're eventually going to need when the stress of doing a job that doesn't do anything starts to eat away at your insides and gives you a chronic illness or a disease of civilization. And that's the idea behind the bullshit jobs. And then there's the shit jobs, which are jobs that just suck. They're just bad. They don't pay well. Like, you're doing something real, and it's like reasonably fulfilling work. Like being a garbage man. Like, you know, you can't not have garbage men. Like, we don't need mid-level finance managers. You know, we don't necessarily need, pretty much the entire management class we can do without. Like, you can have a foreman and a workforce and you're good. But like, there are all these intermediary levels now, and most of them are just like the guy. Remember in that episode of Rick and Morty when all the Jerrys come out of the Jerry machine and they're like shaking each other's hands and yeah, and like they're wearing their own face on the shirt? That's them. That's middle management. And that's all they do. Like, they're not for anything. The argument is they're not for anything. They don't contribute anything in significance to the process. And that is part of why I left Philadelphia. Stay with me on this one. When the world was ending in 2020, and there were riots, and it looked like things were about to get real. The shit was about to hit the fan. I was in Philadelphia, and I realized, wow, Philly doesn't make anything. Like, if I went, even back to where I'm from, I'm down the street from cows. You know, like, I didn't grow up in an especially rural area, but I didn't grow up, like, the area I grew up was a few miles from rural areas, you know? So, like, there was also a city, maybe 10 miles out, but for the most part, things were happening here. There were factories. There were farms. Food was being grown. Things were being manufactured. Things were being created. In Philadelphia, nothing is created. Money is moved from place to place. Computers are clicked on extensively for hours. For hours! Culture. Culture is important. But, like, the culture of Philadelphia, you know, what are you going to do? You can go birds. Cool. In the event of this apocalypse scenario, which again they promised us and again they failed to deliver on, in the event of this scenario, what would Philly have to offer me except dirty needles and human feces? I came to the gradual realization, nothing, and left. And these jobs, let me tie this back into the jobs. I believe it or not, this is going somewhere, I'm not just rambling. These jobs work in the same way in that a lot of these jobs, especially the bullshit jobs, they don't do anything. The jobs just exist to justify the jobs or to heap additional praise on another job. And Graeber also argues that there seems to be an inverse correlation between the relevance and importance of a job and how much you get paid for it. So he talks about, he was really gassing up nurses the whole time. He talks about nurses, he talks about healthcare workers, he talks about preschool attendants, you know, and of course teachers. He loves teachers, but of course he's going to love teacher, he's a teacher. You know, the vacuum cleaner salesman thinks that all your problems can be solved with a proper vacuum. He wanted to call these the caring class. That has not been my experience with teachers, as we've discussed, which is why I brought that up earlier. But the caring class, he argues, is the most worthwhile work. It's what we are built to do as human beings, as social creatures capable of empathy, and I buy that. But it's also some of the most demanding and stressful work because they try to quantify it mathematically, and you can't really do that with something like empathy. We don't have empathy units, or like the scales we have to measure empathy are not of any value. Some nerd just made them up in the school. And then in addition to the high rate of burnout and the merciless overwork, the pay tends not to be good. Now that's a bunch of bull honky because nurses get paid real good, but the medical field tends to be the exception, you know. And for what they're doing at the same time, like, I'm not here to knock on nurses. Like, they're doing the triples. My aunt's a nurse. She does, for years she was doing the triples, these 12-hour shifts. That's insane. That's insane. So what he suggests is these jobs that are most human and most fulfilling are really hard to live on. And these jobs in which you do nothing and you trade away pieces of your soul to people who are just sort of flexing on the power that they have over you, they pay well enough for you to live on. But they don't do anything. They're not for anything. They don't make anything. So you go to work and your job is just to sit there and pretend that you're working. And he talks about the pretending of the working, and I was able to relate to that because, like I said, I worked everywhere. So, like, especially in college, because it was a college town, which means we don't make anything except graduates after a fashion. I worked in a lot of restaurants. And restaurants, they are soul-crushing, but in a different way because of the people that you're dealing with. But it tends not to be manual labor in the sense of loading a truck is manual labor or chopping down a tree is manual labor. You might haul around boxes for some of the day. You know, the buckets of sauce might get hefty, but like you're doing 10 minutes, you'll be fine. you are treated like garbage. You're abused, obviously, in a restaurant, and all this kitchen nightmares. Look at Gordon Ramsay. Gordon Ramsay is not the exception, dude. Gordon Ramsay is the rule. That's how they all are. Gordon Ramsay was just able to make more of a career out of it. That's how working in food works. You are just a whipping boy. So I did a lot of that, and there would come a time when there was nothing left to do. There's only so much to be done, especially if you're not in the middle of like a rush. There's only so much to be done. So when the work runs out, what do? Well, you lay low and look like you're working, because if you ask for more work, the managers are trying to justify their own existence. And it sucks because the book, of course, became Marxist at some point because a teacher wrote it. But the argument that he, of course, made again and again is that we must return the means of production to the proletariat. So largely the restaurant can run itself without all these middle managers. And that's true. That's true. If everyone knows what their job is, you don't need someone yelling at them. You don't need someone to make sure they're doing their job. They'll do their job assuming they have a vested interest in getting their job done. I can't contest that. That's a part of that deeply flawed economic philosophy that I don't take any issue with. I think managers are largely just the fat that needs trimmed. They're kindling. So, but if you go to them and say, hey, boss, I did all the work. Everything's clean, everything's done, what are we going to do? They're going to tell you to do the cleaning again. They're just going to make you do the same thing over and over again. And the example that he gave was when he was working as a dishwasher in some restaurant when he was a teenager, before he became a knowledge worker. He they cleaned everything, there was no one in the restaurant, and he went and he's like, okay boss, what do I do now? And he was like, scour the baseboards with the steel wool. And he said, we just did. They're freshly scoured. He's like, well, scour them again. Keep scouring. If you can lean, you can clean. You're on my time. And there was a big, he was real upset about being on someone else's time. And that also makes sense to me. I am fortunate in that my current one of my current occupations judges on work performance rather than time investment. Like, I'm still there for the appointed amount of time, but what they want is results, and results make sense. Like, that gives you the opportunity to have pride in craftsmanship. That gives you the opportunity to identify with your work, because your work isn't being degraded to just an exchange of the finite hours in your life that you are trading away for enough money to have food and housing, and to buy an outrageously expensive surgery for your dog who busted up his ACL trying to impress German Shepherd ladies at the park. I hear that all the time. My first job was at a grocery store, but the first job that I held for more than a few months was at Party City. And I liked Party City, but that's because it was like a fun place to be and hang out. Like, it wasn't a real job. Like, I couldn't do a career at Party City. I only liked Party City because I was 16 and into Halloween. Halloween was fun. Halloween was like nom though. Like, when they'd hire the temp workers and we'd be stuck there. The place closes at 9 and we'd be stuck there till midnight trying to clean it up. And all of these biddies who they just hired for the season, they'd just be weeping in the aisles. That's how I started into psychology, trying to talk them down from that experience. But Party City, they weren't that bad, but there were occasional visitors who would be that bad. Like the supervisors would, they would push the if you could lean, you could clean thing, because they're trying to hit to minimize the overheads. They're trying to hit the numbers, but the numbers, once again, completely arbitrary. People just making them up. Like, the numbers don't come from anywhere. People just make up the numbers. A nerd who has a degree that probably has nothing to do with actually stocking the shelves, in terms of like how to get the freight from its distribution point into the store and stocked and sold. Whoever is inventing the numbers has nothing to do with any of that. They're just a number inventor. The job is number inventor. And that's one of these bullshit jobs. Someone is there just to justify the job that they made up for him. That's the idea. One big circle. So, and this is something we've seen with government bloat, obviously. And Obama was protecting it. And that was another example that he gave. How they were talking about making all these cuts to health insurance and the medical industry, which is absolutely necessary because the health insurance and the medical industry writ large is labyrinthine and designed for you to get lost in it, because they hope you just leave them alone until you either forget about what you thought was wrong with you or you die, so that way they don't have to give you any of the money that you've been paying into the insurance. And that is its own self-protecting system. You know, the purpose of a system is what it does. And if that's what the system does, guess what it's for? So they were like, Obama, why don't you just cut that back? And he's like, well, if we cut that back, then all of these jobs would be lost. We would lose thousands and thousands of jobs, and then the American people would be suffering. And like, nuh-uh. American people would be much better off in a couple of months. Do you know this could start to fix the economy that you shattered? I'm not coming for Big Barrio here. It's not just his fault. It is all of their faults. Every one of those blood-sucking animals. But I digress. The issue that I took with the book Bullshit Jobs is that it just reads like an anti-work screed. Like, have you ever gone onto r/anti-work on Reddit? I myself have not. I've never been there myself, but I have friends who would like cut and paste me clips from it because it's just so pathetic, dude. These unemployables, these fact totems. It's worth the trip because they're all just writing about how it's impossible to make it in the world today. And like, just get a job and you'll make it in the world today. But like, you might not like your job. And that's what the hell's his name? Graeber? Graeber. That's what Graeber is like. What? There are so many people whose souls are dying because they hate their jobs, which is supposed to give them meaning. Your job doesn't give your life meaning, nerd. Your job can be a contributing factor to a feeling of meaning, but meaning is made yourself. Have you never heard of existentialism? You create your meaning. If you assign that meaning to your job and then you hate your job, guess what? You did this. There are many things you can do to create meaning in your life that do not require you to have the perfect and fulfilling job. You do something you love and you'll never work a day in your life. I love what I do and I work every day a lot. Okay? That's not how it works. You're gonna work. Work is its own thing. Work is necessary, and sometimes it sucks, because if it didn't suck, it would be called play, and that's a different thing. But you work to the end of accomplishing something. You work either to pay for the existence of you and your family, and yes, that is difficult. That is a sacrifice. And sacrifice, as we've established, is unpleasant. But sometimes things are going to be unpleasant. That's part of adulthood, that's part of life. So you don't just complain about it. I mean, you can. You can write a whole book complaining about it. Why would you? You just look pathetic. You can find a job that does enrich your life and does give you purpose, and maybe it's not going to pay as much as you want. So that's the decision that you have to make. Do I need it? Do I need this fulfillment from the job so much that I'm willing to trade away the money that I could be making? Or can I find fulfillment in other areas of my life outside of what I do as work? Can I be a complete human being? I read a book years and years and years ago called La Seduction. I'm sure I pronounced that wrong because it's French, and I don't know how to pronounce that word with the French. That was more Italian or Spanish. But The Seduction, and it was about French culture. And it was about a woman who went to live in an American woman who went to live in France because she was like a Francophile. You know, she was like a weeb for France. And she got really involved in the culture and how they view things. And she was like comparing and contrasting the differences between what she grew up with and what France offered, what France was like. And one of the things that stuck out for her the most is the question, what do you do? So if you ask an American, what do you do? They will tell you about their job begrudgingly because they probably hate it. But you gotta pay the bills, you gotta pay for the health insurance. Whereas if you ask a French, what do you do? They will tell you that they are a fencer, and a novelist. And they are currently working to learn macrame. And then at some point in the exchange, they may happen upon what they do for work, which is like the travailler la boulangerie, and like that is a radical difference, and one that I think Americans could benefit from drawing on. Yeah, you spend most of your time you spend probably 8 hours a day at this job. But 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, that's 40 hours a week. That's not your whole life. You got way more hours in that week. Even factoring out the 8 hours that you're supposed to sleep at night, unless you subscribe to Arnold Schwarzenegger's philosophy of sleep faster, then you're still left with a minimum of another 40 during the work week. And then, I don't know, you figure it out. You figure out how long weekends are. I guess another 16 times 2, 32. Yeah, right? So 40, 70 some hours. And then knock 10 out of there for the what you do in life. Just like doing laundry and cooking dinner and stuff. And that still leaves you with 60-ish. So that's 60-ish hours a week that you can be devoting to living an enriched life. And what are you doing with it? If you're looking at Netflix and complaining about your job, guess what? Your fault. You did this. Capitalism didn't do this to you. You did this to you. And it would be worse under any other system, which is why people flee the other systems to come here. And I know that's trite, and I know you don't like it. You don't need to like it. It's a fact. That's how this happens. End of the day. Do I buy it? Kinda. Because I've worked many bullshit jobs, and I've worked even more shit jobs. And does it suck? Yeah, but like, if your job is the only place that you're getting any fulfillment in your life is going to suck no matter what you do. We're not made just to work. We're made for other things. The other work is what you do to give yourself the ability to do the other things. And it's fine to have pride in craftsmanship, and it's fine to take pride in your work, and it's fine to make it a component of your identity. But you got to view the identity as a pie chart, and work can't be 100% of it, because as soon as it's gone, so are you. It's over. You have to be the rest of a person, is the problem. This is another book. I'm going to wrap it up. This has gone on for too long. This is another book that I read not long ago called The Future is Analog by, I don't care who it was by. I'll put it up there probably to let you know. But I'm not going to say his name because I'm not going to look up his name because that guy, I hate that guy. And the book sucked. It was very bad. And it made the argument that after COVID, when everybody got to work from home, it made everything so much worse for everybody. And that was because all of a sudden the certain je ne sais quoi of being able to have water cooler conversation or go out for drinks after work was suddenly denied them. And sure, if that was all of the social interaction you got, that was probably real hard on you. But like, why don't you do something else? Why don't you go live the rest of a life? Yeah, if all you do is work, you want work to be as comfy and safe and happy as it possibly can be, because you're trying to live off bread alone, is what it is. Like, there's not enough in work. Work itself is not enough for a human being to achieve self-actualization. It's not going to happen no matter what your job is, no matter how much you like it. There are other things. We're made for other things. We're made for more than just work. Work is an important component of it. I like work. I do. That's a weird thing to hear, because everybody hates work. But I like the opportunity. So much so that even on my days off, I'm doing this, which is a form of work. I'm working at it, at least. It's completely arbitrary, but I enjoy it. It's that's a sense of fulfillment. You know, that's a sense of contribution. I'm doing something. I'm making something. If you don't do or make anything, and you try to offload that responsibility for your own life, for justifying your own life, and you try to offload that onto your job as like a graphic ordinator, second mid-tier graphic ordinator, or some other made-up sequence of words, and then of course all you do is sit in like a closet office and click on a computer all day, and you're like, well, this isn't fulfilling me. Of course it's not. But it's not its job to fulfill you. It's your job to find something that fulfills you. And that might mean taking a pay cut. How important is it to you? For some of them, it was very important. But all of the examples that David Graeber used in his book were just like these pitiful people who were like, I didn't like my job clicking boxes, so I quit it, and now I play guitar for a living and live in a van. Okay, I'm glad you found happiness, my man, but I don't know if that's universalizable. I don't know if that's going to work for everybody. Thank you for tuning in to my unhinged screed. I will have more unhinged screeds forthcoming shortly, I assure you. Like, follow, subscribe if you liked this, or if you want to fight about it. That's okay too. I'll see you soon. I love you.